A dog does not lie. That is the thing people forget. A dog cannot rehearse a smile or fake a phone call or build a story with the right words in the right order. A dog just knows. And for 43 nights straight, Bo knew something lived beneath my kitchen floor. He clawed at the oak until his nails left grooves in wood I had sanded with my own hands. I told myself it was mice. I told myself it was grief. But mice do not cry, and grief does not breathe. I am deeply grateful you are here with me. Before we go further, I need to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you stopped looking at what was happening right in front of you? Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. It helps me know I am not telling this into the dark. One note. Parts of this story have been adjusted for clarity. Any similarities to real individuals are coincidental, but the lessons here are worth every second of your time. Night 43 started like every night before it. 2:14 in the morning. October dark pressing against the windows. The sound of Bo's nails on oak, pulling me from a sleep I was not really in. I had stopped sleeping fully about a year after Dorothy passed. The bed felt too wide, the house too quiet. Every creak and settle amplified in the absence of her breathing beside me. I found him in the kitchen. Same spot. Always the same spot. 4 feet from the stove, 2 feet from the baseboard, where the island meets the main floor. Bo sat with his nose pressed against a seam in the wood, clawing in slow, deliberate strokes. Not frantic. Not playful. Purposeful. The way a dog digs when it knows exactly what is underneath and cannot understand why no one else is digging. 42 nights I had pulled him away. Told him to lie down. Brought him back to his bed in the hallway. 42 nights. I assumed he was grieving Dorothy, the way I was. Missing her scent in the kitchen where she used to stand barefoot on summer mornings, scrambling eggs and singing to the radio. Dogs mourn. Everyone knows that. I thought Bo was mourning. But on night 43, something shifted in me. A carpenter spends his life reading wood. Every plank tells a story if you know the language. The grain shows you where the tree grew thick and where it starved. The rings tell you drought years and flood years. The knots reveal where a branch once reached for light. And after 44 years of building with oak and walnut and cypress and pine, I could hear things in wood that other people walked over without noticing. That night, I did not pull Bo away. I crouched beside him, placed my palm flat on the floor where his nose pressed. The oak was cool. October in Savannah still holds warmth in the daytime. But by 2 in the morning, the floors release their heat back into the joists below, except this spot. This one section, no larger than a dinner plate, was not cool. It held something. Not warmth exactly. A degree. Maybe 2. The faintest difference. The kind of difference that 44 years of pressing palms against surfaces had trained my hands to feel. Something below this floor was generating heat. Something alive. I lowered myself all the way down. Shoulder on the oak. Ear pressed flat against the wood the way I used to press against a finished cabinet to check for rattles. Bo whimpered beside me. His tail thumped once, twice. Then stopped. I held my breath. Counted to 10. At 6 I heard it. Not scratching. Not scurrying. Breathing. Quick and shallow. The breathing of something small, trying very hard to be silent. The kind of silence that is not natural but learned, practiced. The way children practice quiet when quiet has become a matter of survival. My hand pressed harder into the oak. Bo pressed his nose against my ear as if to say, I told you. I have been telling you for 43 nights. That was 2:14 in the morning. I did not sleep again. By 7:45, I stood at the kitchen counter, with a cup of coffee I had not tasted, waiting for the sound of Megan's footsteps on the stairs. She came down at 8, hair pulled back, yoga pants, the smile she wore every morning like a uniform she had ironed the night before. Good morning, Dad. She called me Dad. Had since the day she married Nathan. It always sounded right. That morning, it sounded like a costume. She saw Bo lying in his spot. The same spot. Nose on wood. Tail still. He was at it again last night, I said. Casual. Testing. Megan opened the refrigerator, pulled out almond milk, poured it into her coffee without looking at the dog. Probably that raccoon family again. They nest under the house every fall. I will call pest control. Monday. She said it the way a person says something they have said before. Smooth. Unrehearsed. Because it was rehearsed so many times it became automatic. But raccoons do not nest in crawl spaces in October in coastal Georgia. Raccoons birth in spring and leave by summer. I had lived on this land 41 years. I knew every creature that sheltered beneath my foundation, and none of them breathed the way I heard something breathe at 2:14 in the morning. Megan left for yoga at 8:15. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear past the live oak at the corner of Abercorn. Then, I walked to the kitchen, stood over the spot where Bo still lay pressed against the floor. I got on my knees. Something I had done 10,000 times in 44 years of carpentry, but never like this. Never looking at my own floor with the suspicion that it was lying to me. I pulled a flashlight from the junk drawer, angled the beam low across the surface. When light hits wood at a shallow angle, it reveals everything the eye misses from above. Depressions, ridges, the faintest inconsistency in the plane, and there it was. A section approximately 4 feet by 6 feet. Slightly different in tone, slightly different in texture. The grain ran the wrong direction. Not perpendicular to the joists the way I had laid every board in 1983. These boards ran parallel. Whoever replaced this section did not know the original pattern. Did not know that I had laid every plank east to west because Dorothy said morning light should run along the grain, not across it. I ran my fingers over the seam where old wood met new. The joint was tight. Professional enough to fool someone who was not looking. But I was looking now, and what I saw made my stomach drop the way a floor drops when the joists beneath it have rotted through. Someone had cut into my floor. Someone had removed a section of the oak I had chosen, and milled, and laid 41 years ago, and someone had replaced it with wood that looked close enough to pass. Close enough for a man who was not paying attention. Close enough for a man who trusted the woman eating breakfast across from him every morning. But not close enough for a carpenter. Not close enough for a man whose hands had memorized every plank in this kitchen the way a pianist memorizes keys. And whatever lived below that new wood was not a raccoon. It was not mice. It was not grief. It was breathing. And it had been breathing beneath my kitchen for a very long time. I spent 44 years reading wood the way doctors read X-rays. Pressing my hands against surfaces and knowing instantly what was healthy and what was compromised. Knowing which joint would hold another 50 years and which would split before the next hard rain. My father taught me when I was 14. He stood me in front of a walnut bureau he had built for a client in Statesboro and said, "Touch it, Walter. Tell me what it is telling you." I was just a boy. I told him it felt smooth. He shook his head. He said, "Smooth is what lazy hands feel. A craftsman feels the story." This board was keyline dried too fast. Feel the tension? It will warp within a year. And sure enough, 6 months later, that bureau drawer stuck because the panel had cupped a 1/4 inch. That memory lived in my hands the way instinct lives in a hunting dog. And kneeling on my kitchen floor that Thursday morning with Megan's car long gone down Abercorn, my hands were telling me a story that made my blood slow. I pulled a magnifying glass from my workbench drawer, examined the grain pattern under the flashlight beam. My original floor was 1/4 sawn white oak. I had milled every board myself at Henderson's sawmill on Route 17 back in '83. 1/4 sawn means the log is cut at a perpendicular angle to the growth rings. It produces a tight, straight grain with a distinctive fleck pattern. Stable, resistant to warping. The kind of cut a man chooses when he is building something meant to outlast him. The new section was plain sawn, wider grain, more variation. Cathedral pattern arching through the face. Beautiful in its own right. But wrong for this floor the way a pine door is wrong on a mahogany cabinet. Anyone walking across it in shoes would never feel the difference. But a man on his knees with a light angled low could see it as clearly as a misspelled word in a sentence. I pressed my thumbnail into the joint between old and new. The original boards were joined with hide glue. The old way. The way my father and grandfather used. Hide glue is organic, made from animal collagen. It bonds wood at a molecular level but remains reversible with heat and moisture. It breathes with the house, expands in summer humidity, contracts in winter dry, forgives the movement that 40 Georgia summers demand. The new boards were joined with polyurethane adhesive. Modern, strong, waterproof, but rigid. It fights the wood instead of moving with it. Over time, polyurethane joints telegraph themselves. They show as a faint raised line where the glue resists the natural expansion of the planks around it. This joint had already begun to telegraph. Hairline. Invisible. Unless you knew where to press. I knew where to press. The fasteners confirmed everything. My floor was secured with cut nails. Square-shanked, hand-forged style, purchased in bulk from a restoration supplier in Charleston who still manufactured them the traditional way. Cut nails grip differently than wire nails. They wedge into the grain rather than spreading it. The holding power is superior in hardwood, and they age with a patina that matches the surrounding lumber. The new section used pneumatic finish nails. 18 gauge. Brad points. The kind a trim carpenter shoots with an air gun to hang baseboard in a new construction home. Fast, efficient, invisible from above because the heads are sunk and filled. But from below, in the crawl space, every nail would show its modern round shank against the square-shanked originals surrounding it. Someone had hired a contractor. Someone who worked fast and clean but did not know the history of this floor. Did not know that every original nail was square. Every original joint was hide glue. Every original board was quarter sawn and laid east to west because a woman who loved morning light told her husband which direction the grain should run. I sat back on my heels. Thought carefully. In March of last year, I had driven to Atlanta to visit Nathan for 5 days. His firm was handling a case that kept him working 18-hour days and I wanted to bring him dinner and human company. When I returned, Megan told me she had hired a flooring man to refinish the kitchen area near the island. Said the legs of the bar stools had scratched the surface. Said it looked so much better now. I had thanked her. Told her it looked great. Walked across it every morning for 19 months, without once getting down on my knees to look at what she had actually done to my floor. 19 months. 578 mornings of pouring coffee. 10 feet above something I should have found on day one. If I had gotten on my knees when I came home from Atlanta, if I had done what any carpenter should do after someone else works on his house, run his hands across the surface. Check the joints. Read the grain. But I trusted her. The way I trusted Dorothy. Completely. Without question. Because she smiled at me across the breakfast table and called me Dad, and made me believe the floor beneath us held nothing worth questioning. I placed my palm flat on the new section one more time. Pressed. Felt the faint warmth that had pulled Bo here night after night. Then I shifted my hand to the seam where new met old. Right there. The exact spot where Bo pressed his nose every single night at 2 in the morning. Bo lifted his head from across the kitchen. Watched me with brown eyes that held no confusion. Only patience. The patience of a creature who had spent 43 nights saying the same thing in the only language he had, who had carved grooves into oak with his own nails, trying to reach something his nose told him was there. He stood, walked over, pressed his muzzle against the seam beside my hand, and his tail moved. Not the frantic wagging of a dog who hears a treat bag. Slow, low, a deep wag from the base of the spine. The wag I had only seen him give 3 people in 8 years of life. Dorothy. me, and one other, my grandson Eli, who was supposed to be at Palmetto Academy in Charleston, 200 miles east, learning, growing, safe, but Bo's nose pressed against the seam in my kitchen floor, and his tail said otherwise. His tail said the third person he loved was not 200 miles away. His tail said that person was close, closer than I had ever imagined, close enough to smell through quarter-inch oak and 19 months of polyurethane adhesive that had no business being in a house built on hide glue and trust. I pulled my hand from the floor, stood on legs that felt uncertain for the first time in 41 years of standing in this kitchen. Bo looked up at me, tail still moving, eyes that said what his voice could not. He is here, Papa. He has been here the whole time. I need to tell you about this house. Because the house is the reason everything happened the way it did. The house is where every secret was kept, and where every truth was eventually found. And the house began with Dorothy, 1981. I was 25. She was 23. We stood on a half-acre lot on Abercorn Street, in the Ardsley Park neighborhood of Savannah. Late June, the kind of Georgia heat that wraps around you like wet wool. Live oaks lining the street with Spanish moss hanging, so still it looked painted against the sky. The lot held a concrete slab from a bungalow torn down in the 60s and a pecan tree old enough to have seen the Civil War. Dorothy put her hand on that pecan tree and said, "This one stays. Everything else we build ourselves." I had been a carpenter for 7 years by then, apprenticed under my father since 14, built my first solo cabinet at 17. By 25, I could joint a board blind, could feel a 64th of an inch out of square with my fingertips alone, but I had never built a house, never taken raw lumber, and turned it into the kind of place where a family could grow and hold together across decades. Dorothy did not care. She trusted my hands the way I trusted her instinct. And her instinct said, "This lot, this street, this city where the oaks grow so wide, their branches touch across the road like old friends reaching for each other." I bought the white oak from Henderson's Mill on Route 17 outside Statesboro. Drove there 6 times in my flatbed truck, loading planks so fresh, the sap still beaded on the end grain. Selected each board by hand. Checked the grain. Checked the rings. Left behind anything with a shake or a hidden check that would open up in 10 years and betray the floor above. Dorothy came with me on the 3rd trip. She ran her palm across a stack of quarter-sawn boards, drying in the Georgia sun, and said something I never forgot. "Wood that is loved holds differently, Walter. I can feel it. This stack knows someone chose it on purpose." I told her she was being sentimental. She smiled and said, "Sentimental is just another word for paying attention." It took me 11 months to build our house. Every evening after my day jobs, I drove to Abercorn Street and worked until dark. Laid the floor joists on 16-inch centers. Sistered every other joist with an extra 2x10 because I wanted that floor stiff enough to hold a piano, a Christmas tree, 3 generations dancing. Then the subfloor. 3/4-inch tongue-and-groove plywood glued and screwed to eliminate any squeak. And on top of that, my white oak. Every plank laid east to west, because Dorothy stood in the empty frame one October morning, when the light came sideways through the studs and said, "The sun should run along the grain, not across it. It makes the wood glow, so east to west." For her, every board tongue-and-grooved, tapped tight with a rubber mallet, glued with hide glue mixed in a double boiler on a camp stove in the yard. The smell of that glue, animal and ancient. Dorothy said it smelled like the house was being stitched together with something that had been alive once. She was right. Hide glue is made from life. And it bonds like life. Flexible, forgiving, strong enough to hold but willing to release when the time comes. I finished the kitchen floor on a Sunday in April of '82. Dorothy knelt beside me while I tapped the final board into place. She pressed both palms flat against the oak, the way she would press them against a person's face. Feeling. Listening. "This floor knows it is loved," she said. I can feel it in the grain. Nathan arrived 4 years later. Born upstairs because Dorothy refused to leave the house, she helped sand and stain and polish. He came into the world on a Tuesday in September, screaming like a man who had important things to say. Dorothy laughed through her exhaustion and told me, "He has your lungs and my impatience." That boy ran across my oak floors for 18 years before he left for college. Barefoot summers, sock-sliding winters, every scratch and dent a chapter in the story of his growing. I never sanded those marks out. Dorothy would not let me. She said a floor without scars is a floor nobody lived on. Then the cancer came. 4 years ago this November. Pancreatic. The kind that announces itself late and moves fast. Dorothy was 65. Still strong. Still pressing her palms against every surface in this house as if she were checking the pulse of something alive. 14 months from diagnosis to the end. I watched the woman who helped me build this house grow thin in a room she helped me frame. Bo never left her side. 8 years old. And he had been hers from the day we brought him home as a pup, a golden retriever with a patience that matched hers. He lay beside her hospice bed with his chin on the mattress edge. Watching. Waiting. The way dogs wait when they know what is coming. But refuse to leave. Her last clear morning was a Thursday. November light, through the bedroom window. Thin and gray. Her hand in mine felt like paper over oak. Light enough to blow away. She looked at me with eyes that held everything she had ever been. Every board she helped me choose. Every nail she watched me set. Every Sunday morning standing barefoot on the kitchen floor humming while eggs popped in the skillet. "Keep them close, Walter." Her voice barely a whisper. "Wood holds. You hold. Promise me." I promised. The way husbands promise dying wives, with everything I had left. She passed that afternoon. Bo stayed beside the bed for 3 days. Would not eat. Would not move. When we finally brought her body out, he walked to the kitchen and lay down on the oak floor, her floor, and stayed there. 6 months before the cancer took Dorothy, she gave Eli a gift. His 8th birthday. A brown teddy bear with button eyes and a flannel ribbon around its neck. She wrapped it in tissue paper and wrote on the tag in her handwriting that slanted left the way a southpaw's always does. "His name is Sawdust. He will keep you company when I cannot." Eli held that bear against his chest and said, "Nana, I will take care of him forever." Dorothy pressed her forehead against his. The same gesture she used with me when words were not enough. Bone against bone. Love transferred through contact. She left her fingerprints on every surface of this house. Her books on the living room shelf. A birdwatcher's guide to the Georgia coast, with her notes in the margins. A woodworking encyclopedia she bought me for our 30th anniversary that I never once opened because she had already taught me everything in it just by watching. And a King James Bible with pressed magnolia petals between the pages because she said flowers and scripture both needed weight to hold their shape. I did not know yet how much those fingerprints would matter. Or that in a darkness I could not imagine, they would be the only thing keeping my grandson's mind from breaking apart. 14 months after Dorothy passed, Megan sat me down at the kitchen counter. The same counter where Dorothy used to lean on her elbows and watch me mix wood filler on Saturday mornings. Megan folded her hands the way people fold them when the speech has been practiced in a mirror. "Dad, you should not be alone in this house. It is too big for one person. Nathan and I have talked about it. Eli misses you. And honestly, I think you need him as much as he needs you." She was right. Or I believed she was right. The house had felt enormous since Dorothy left it. Every room held her absence, the way an empty drawer holds the shape of what used to fill it. Bo wandered from room to room some evenings, like he was searching for a scent that was fading faster than either of us could accept. So Megan and Eli moved in. And for 11 months, this house felt like a house again. Eli was 8.5. Brown hair that never stayed flat no matter how many times Megan wet it down. Brown eyes that tracked everything with a curiosity Dorothy would have recognized as her own. Reflected back. He ran through the house the way Nathan once had. Barefoot on oak in summer. Socks sliding around corners in winter. Bo following 3 steps behind, like a shadow that had finally found something worth following again. But it was the workshop that captured him. My garage workshop where I kept my tools and my sanity after Dorothy died. Eli would appear at the door every Saturday morning. Bare feet on concrete. Sawdust, the teddy bear, tucked under one arm. "Papa, can I watch?" I gave him safety glasses sized for a child's face. Sat him on the stool beside the workbench. He watched me sand and plane and joint with the focus of a boy who understood that something important was happening even if he could not name it yet. One Saturday he asked me something I kept for years, the way Dorothy kept magnolia petals in her Bible. I was hand sanding a cherry jewelry box for a client. Slow strokes along the grain. The wood humming under the paper the way it always does when the grit is right and the pressure is even. "Papa, why does wood sing when you sand it?" I looked at him. 8 years old. Bare under his arm. Safety glasses too big for his face. Asking a question that most woodworkers spend a lifetime trying to answer. I told him because the sandpaper is waking it up, bringing the grain to the surface where it can breathe. He thought about this. Tilted his head the way Dorothy used to when she was turning an idea over. "So it is happy? The wood is happy because someone is touching it?" I did not have a better answer than that. Maybe that was the best answer there ever was. Then one evening, 11 months after moving in, Megan sat me down again. Same counter. Same folded hands. A different speech. "Dad, I found an incredible opportunity for Eli. Palmetto Academy in Charleston. Gifted program. Only 20 students accepted per year. Eli tested. In the 98th percentile. I did not know Eli had been tested." She smiled the way a person smiles when the contract is already signed. "Nathan is supportive. They have a wonderful residential program. FaceTime every Sunday. It will be like he never left." I wanted to argue. Eli still asked me about wood every Saturday. Still slept with sawdust against his chest. Still needed the weight of this house around him. The way all children need the weight of something permanent. But Megan had brochures, testimonials, a website with smiling children in green blazers. She had an answer for every hesitation I expressed before I finished expressing it. And Nathan agreed. My son, who trusted his wife the way I once trusted Dorothy. Fully. Without reservation. Because love had taught him that trust was default and suspicion was failure. So Eli left. Or that is what I believed. Megan drove him to Charleston on a Sunday in March. I stood on the front porch in morning light that fell through the live oaks in broken gold. Eli's face pressed against the rear window of Megan's sedan, his hand against the glass. His mouth moving. I could not hear what he said through the window, but his lips made shapes I recognized. I found out 3 years later he was saying, "Bye, Papa. Bye, Bo. I love you." Bo stood beside me on that porch and did something he had never done in 8 years. He barked. Not once. Not twice. 4 sustained barks aimed at the car moving down Abercorn. Loud. Desperate. The sound of an animal who knows something is wrong but lacks the language to make anyone understand. I pulled him back by the collar and said, "Easy, boy. He will be home for Thanksgiving." But Thanksgiving came, and Megan said the program discouraged mid-semester family visits. Christmas came, and she said Eli was invited to a classmate's family celebration in Hilton Head. Spring break and summer. And every holiday for 3 years had an explanation attached to it. Smooth. Delivered before I asked. The way someone patches a hole before you notice the wall is damaged. I spoke to Eli every Sunday at 6:15 on FaceTime. His face on a screen. Smiling. Talking about teachers and projects, and a friend named Jackson who liked building model airplanes. I smiled back, told stories about Bo. Said I love you, buddy. Asked when I could visit. Megan always answered that one. The school prefers parents and grandparents schedule visits through the admissions office. I will send you the link, Dad. The link never worked. Or I typed it wrong. Or the website was being updated. Always a reason. Always a wall between my question and any answer I could touch with my own hands. 3 years. 1,095 days. 1,095 mornings making coffee alone in a kitchen that used to vibrate with the sound of a boy's bare feet running across oak and a golden dog scrambling behind him. I mourned Eli's absence the way I mourned Dorothy's. Quietly. In the workshop, sanding wood that no one was watching me sand anymore. Building things for clients who were not my grandson. Filling hours that used to be full with a child's questions about why wood sings and whether grain has feelings and if trees miss their branches after the lumber mill takes them away. 3 years of missing him. 3 years of believing the screen. 3 years of pulling Bo away from the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning and telling him to let go of something I thought was grief. Until night 43. When I stopped pulling and started listening. When I got on my knees and read the grain the way my father taught me. When I discovered that my grandson had never gone to Charleston, had never sat in a classroom, had never made a friend named Jackson. He had never left this house. And Bo had known from the very first night, had pressed his nose against the wood and clawed at the boundary between above and below and barked his 4 desperate barks. Not at a car driving away, but at a boy being carried beneath the floor. He used to run across barefoot every Saturday morning, 43 nights. I owed Bo 43 apologies. And I owed my grandson 3 years. Tuesday afternoon. Megan left for a Pilates class in Pooler at 1:15. I watched her car turn left on Abercorn from the kitchen window. Waited until the taillights disappeared past the Henderson property. Then I moved. A carpenter does not swing a hammer before he surveys the structure. That is the first rule my father drilled into me before I was old enough to hold a level. You study the building before you touch it. You walk the perimeter. You look for settlement, for cracks in the foundation, for places where the load has shifted and the structure is compensating in ways the eye misses, but the hand feels. The exterior crawlspace access sat on the south side of the house, behind the azalea hedge Dorothy planted in '89, a plywood hatch secured with a padlock. The lock was mine. Installed in '96 after a possum family set up residence under the guest bathroom. I kept the key on my shop ring. The key turned. The hatch opened, and I lowered myself into the space beneath my own home for the first time in over 2 years. Crawl space. 4 feet of clearance between the Georgia clay and the bottom of my floor joists. Dark. Humid. The particular smell of southern earth that has never seen direct sunlight. Red clay and moisture, and the faint sweetness of decaying leaf matter that blows in through the foundation vents every autumn. I moved on. Hands and knees. Flashlight in my right hand. Left palm pressing into clay still warm from October ground heat. Above me, the underside of my floor. Joists running north to south on 16-inch centers. Subfloor screwed tight. Copper water lines heading to the kitchen. Romex electrical running in careful lines I had stapled myself 4 decades ago. Everything familiar. Everything as I had built it. Until I reached the center of the crawl space, directly beneath the kitchen. And then nothing was familiar at all. A wall. Not my wall. A partition built from 3/4-inch plywood sheets, screwed into 2x4 framing. The framing was pressure-treated lumber, green-tinted, the kind you buy at any big box store for ground contact applications. The screws were Phillips head, 3-inch deck screws driven with a power driver. Fast work. Competent, but not crafted. The joints between plywood sheets were sealed with expanding spray foam. The kind that comes in a can and cures yellow. And rigid. Soundproofing. Crude but effective. The partition divided my crawl space into 2 sections. The front half, where I knelt, remained open. The rear half, directly beneath the kitchen and part of the hallway, was sealed behind this plywood wall. The only access was a door. Not a hatch. A door. 32 inches wide. Hollow core interior style. Hung on 3 brass hinges. And beside the handle, a keypad. Small, electronic. The kind you see on hotel room safes and self-storage units. A red LED glowing steady in the dark like an eye that never closes. Someone had built a room inside my crawl space. Behind my joists. Under my floor. In the home I constructed with my own hands, for a woman I loved, and a family I would die for. I pressed my palm flat against the plywood door. Not cold. Not the ambient temperature of Georgia clay in October. Warmer. Distinctly warmer. The kind of warmth that only comes from a living body heating enclosed air. And through that thin, hollow core barrier, I detected what my kitchen floor had muffled. Scent. Lavender soap. Wax crayons. The faintly sour smell of enclosed space that has held a human being for a long time without adequate ventilation. I pressed my ear to the door. Closed my eyes. The flashlight beam pointed at nothing. A page turning. That is what I heard. The soft whisper of paper. Moving against paper. Someone reading. Someone small enough to fit in a crawlspace room, and quiet enough to turn pages, as if silence were a language they had mastered long ago. I pulled back. My hands were shaking. Not from cold. From the effort of not ripping that door off its hinges. From the discipline of knowing that a carpenter who tears into a structure without understanding what is load-bearing brings the whole building down on whoever is inside. I measured. Estimated the room dimensions from the partition footprint, roughly 10 feet by 8 feet. The ceiling height would be the crawlspace clearance, 4 feet, not enough for an adult to stand, but enough for a child to sit. To lie down, to live. If living was what you called it. I retreated. Sealed the exterior hatch. Replaced the padlock. Brushed the clay from my knees. Walked back inside. Made a pot of coffee I would not drink. And waited for night. It came at 1:47 in the morning. I lay in bed with every light off. And every sense tuned to the frequency of this house. The frequency I had known for 41 years. Every settling joist, every expanding pipe, every sound the structure made in the small hours when it thought no one was listening. Megan's bedroom door opened. Soft. The click of a latch released slowly by someone who has practiced releasing it without sound. Footsteps in the hallway. Not toward the bathroom. Toward the kitchen. Light steps. Bare feet on oak. The sound of someone who knows exactly which boards creak and avoids them. Then a sound I had never heard in 41 years of living in this house. A sound that should not exist. The low groan of a hatch opening in my kitchen floor. Beneath the area rug Megan had placed by the island 6 months after moving in. I always thought that rug was decorative. Now I understood it was functional. Hiding the cuts she had made in my oak. Hiding the hinges. Hiding the access point to whatever lived below. Footsteps descending. A faint electronic tone. The keypad. Then the click of a door, opening and closing. Then silence. I looked at the bedside clock. 1:47. Red numbers in the dark. 30 minutes. I counted every second. At 2:17, I heard the sequence reverse. Door closing. Keypad tone. Footsteps ascending. The hatch, settling back into the floor. Bare feet avoiding creaky boards. Her bedroom door clicking shut. 30 minutes. Every night. Carrying something down that required a tray. Bringing something up that fit in a small trash bag. Feeding something. Cleaning something. Maintaining something alive in a room beneath my kitchen floor while I slept 22 feet away. I reached for the nightstand drawer. Pulled out the logbook Dorothy gave me on our 35th anniversary. Leather cover worn soft at the spine. Grid paper inside. The kind I used for cutting lists and joint measurements and project timelines. I opened to a blank page. Wrote the date. Below it, I listed every detail, every measurement, every observation. Plywood thickness, screw type, foam brand, door style, keypad model, LED color, time of descent, duration, temperature differential, scent profile, page turning sound, 1,095 nights. That is how many nights had passed since Eli supposedly left for Charleston. 1,095 trips down that hatch. 1,095 meals carried on a tray. 1,095 small trash bags brought back up. And 1,095 mornings I poured coffee 10 feet above whatever she was feeding. Whatever she was keeping. Whatever small body was turning pages in the dark and breathing the kind of silence that only a child learns when silence becomes the difference between safety and something worse. I set the logbook on the nightstand, closed my eyes, did not sleep. The measuring had begun, and every measurement pointed the same direction. Down, through my oak floor, through my joists, through a plywood wall that should not exist, toward a child who had been there the whole time, Thursday morning. I sat in my old Silverado, in the Kroger parking lot on Abercorn, with the engine off and both hands on the steering wheel. The truck smelled like wood shavings and old leather, two things that had always meant safety. I needed that safety because the number I was about to dial would either confirm the worst truth of my life or prove me a man whose grief had finally untethered him from reason. I dialed Palmetto Academy, Charleston, South Carolina. The number was on their website. Green and gold colors. Photographs of children in blazers holding science trophies. A mission statement about nurturing exceptional minds. It looked exactly like the kind of school a devoted mother would choose for a gifted child. Good morning, Palmetto Academy. This is Christine. How may I help you? My throat tightened the way hide glue tightens when the temperature drops too fast. Good morning. My name is Walter Briggs. I am calling about my grandson, Eli Briggs. He has been enrolled in your residential program for approximately 3 years. I would like to inquire about his attendance record this semester. A pause. Keyboard sounds. Let me look that up for you, sir. Could you spell the last name? Briggs. First name, Eli. He would be 11 years old. 4th or 5th grade. More typing. A longer pause. The kind of pause that already contains its answer. Sir, I am not finding any student by that name in our current enrollment. Let me check our full historical database going back 6 years. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. No, sir. We have no record of any student named Eli Briggs ever having been enrolled at Palmetto Academy. Is it possible you have the wrong institution? The parking lot contracted around me. The way a room contracts when you realize the walls are closer than you measured. Could you check one more time? Perhaps under a different spelling. Sir, I have searched every variation. Briggs. Briggs. Brig. We have never enrolled a child by that name. I am sorry. Would you like me to connect you with admissions? No. Thank you, Christine. You have been very helpful. I ended the call. Stared through the windshield at a woman loading groceries into a minivan. A man walking a Labrador past the pharmacy entrance. Ordinary life. Thursday morning, and my grandson did not exist in the building where I had believed he was living for 3 years. I called 2 more schools. Savannah Country Day, Chatham Academy. Names Megan had woven into conversation over the years, the way a carpenter weaves dowels into a joint. Invisible once set. Eli's teacher at Savannah Country Day recommended this reading list. Chatham Academy was our backup if Palmetto did not work out. Small references placed casually. Easy to absorb. Impossible to question without seeming paranoid. Neither school had ever enrolled an Eli Briggs. Neither recognized Megan's name. I opened my phone. The family group chat Megan maintained held 3 years of photographs. Eli at a science fair. Eli at a soccer game. Eli with classmates in front of a brick building draped with a green banner reading Palmetto Academy Fall Festival. I selected the most recent image. Eli standing beside a display board about marine biology. Green cardigan. Brown hair combed flat. I opened a reverse image search application. Uploaded the photograph. Results populated in 6 seconds. The brick building was not Palmetto Academy. It was a stock photograph available on 4 websites for $11. The banner was digitally altered. The original image showed a different school in a different state. I checked a second photograph. Eli at the fall soccer tournament. Grass field. White lines. Goalposts. All stock. Same website. Same price point. The uniform was edited. The face was Eli's, but it had not aged. It was the same 8-year-old face from 3 years ago processed through software that estimated what growth might look like without actually photographing a growing child. I checked the most recent report card Megan had forwarded to Nathan 2 months ago. Eli Briggs. Grade 5. All A marks. Teacher comments praising curiosity and leadership. I zoomed in on the header. The school logo was pixelated, slightly blurred at the edges the way images blur when they are scaled up from low resolution. The font was Arial. I pulled up Palmetto Academy's actual website and navigated to their parent portal. Official font was Garamond. Logo was crisp. Vector-based. Professional. The report card on my phone was a fabrication. Built on a computer. Printed. Photographed. Sent to a father in Atlanta who loved his son enough to trust a screen and never thought to hold the paper against the light, the way a carpenter holds a board against a window to check for hidden checks in the grain. I set my phone on the dashboard. Pressed both palms against my eyes until colors burst behind my lids. 3 years of stock photographs purchased for the price of a sandwich. 3 years of report cards designed in software with the wrong font. 3 years of a school that had never heard my grandson's name. Eli never went to Charleston. Never wore a green blazer. Never stood on a soccer field. Never made a friend named Jackson who liked model airplanes. My grandson had never left my house. And every image Megan sent was a costume draped over absence. A veneer glued over a void. I drove home. Parked in the driveway. Sat for 3 minutes, breathing the way Dorothy taught me when precision mattered more than speed. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Steady enough to cut a straight line. Inside, I checked the Amazon account Megan and I shared for household purchases. Her card linked. I had never examined her individual purchase history. Never had cause. The way you never inspect the subfloor of a house that is not sagging. I scrolled. Wednesday last week. Amazon. $87. I tapped the order. Horizon Organic Whole Milk. 2 cartons. Cheerios. 1 box. Flintstones. Chewable vitamins. Crayola crayons. 64-pack. A coloring book featuring ocean animals. Children's socks. 6-pack. Size small. I scrolled back further. Every single week. The same rotating items. Milk. Cereal. Vitamins. Crayons. Coloring books. Small clothing from the children's section. Sometimes a puzzle. Sometimes a stuffed animal. Sometimes a bottle of lavender soap. Lavender. The same scent I had detected through the crawlspace door on Tuesday afternoon. The scent of a child being bathed somewhere inside my house, without my knowledge. That evening I ate dinner with Megan. Chicken marsala. She asked about my day. I told her I reorganized the tool wall in the workshop. She told me about Pilates, about a neighbor's new landscaping, about a podcast she was enjoying. 2 people at a table. 2 plates. Pleasant conversation. 1 person hiding a child beneath the kitchen. The other counting stock photographs in his head and chewing food that tasted like sawdust. 2 plates on the counter. 1 plate below the floor. Every meal I shared with Megan was a meal my grandson ate alone beneath us. Same hour. Same house. 10 feet of oak and joist and clay. Between a dining table and a child eating by the glow of whatever single light source she had provided him. I smiled at her across the table. She smiled back. Two people wearing the same kind of mask. But only one of us knew both faces. And only one of us was building a case one receipt at a time. Friday morning. 7:05. My phone buzzed before I opened my eyes. Ruth Clarkson, Dorothy's closest friend for 31 years. The woman who sat in the front pew at the funeral with her jaw set like someone holding a building together by will alone, who brought peach cobbler every Tuesday for 4 months because she said grief should never go unfed, who managed other people's money for 38 years before retiring with a reputation for catching discrepancies the way a hunting dog catches scent. Ruth never called before 9. A 7:05 call meant something had shattered her considerable restraint. Walter, can you meet me this morning? Not at the house. River Street Cafe. The one with the blue awning near the Cotton Exchange. 8:30. I was there by 8:15. Back corner table beside a window overlooking a container ship easing past Hutchinson Island. Ruth arrived at 8:22. Leather satchel. The expression of someone who had spent the night reading documents they wished they could unread. She sat without ordering. Pulled a manila folder thick enough to shim a door. Walter, how much do you know about Eli's education trust? I knew what Dorothy told me. She started it when Eli was born. Life insurance from her father. Savings built over 2 decades. Every birthday check redirected. Every tax refund folded in. An account at Savannah First National meant to carry Eli through college, graduate school, a first home. 2.1 million, I said. Ruth opened the folder. Dorothy named Nathan as primary trustee. I was secondary. Everything ran clean for 2 years after she died. Then 10 months ago, Megan petitioned Nathan for transfer of management authority, told him the fund needed higher yield restructuring. Nathan signed because Megan presented it, and because Nathan trusts his wife. Her voice hardened on those last 5 words, the way oak hardens after its first winter. Once she had sole access, it began. She spread bank statements across the table, highlighted in yellow and red like caution tape around a condemned structure. April, 90,000. May, 110,000. June, 140. July through September, escalating month after month. 1.7 million, gone in 24 months. Only 400,000 remains. Frozen 3 weeks ago when my forensic accountant flagged it. Where did it go? Ruth laid a printout beside the statements like an autopsy report beside a body. Cryptocurrency platforms. 3 exchanges. Ethereum. Solana. Tokens that did not exist 6 months before she bought them. Total crypto losses. $680,000. Online luxury retail. Saks. Nordstrom. Net-a-Porter. 340,000 shipped to a P.O. box in Pooler not registered to her address. Hidden credit card debt, under her maiden name. Megan Holt. 280,000 in revolving balances across 4 cards. She was not finished. A property document slid across the table. Tybee Island. Chatham County. Dorothy's beach cottage. The 1-bedroom on 6th Street inherited from her aunt. Appraised at $410,000. Sold 11 months ago to a shell company in Delaware. Proceeds wired to a crypto brokerage. Your signature on the deed of transfer. My signature was not on any deed. I know. The G is too round. The B leans wrong. A handwriting analyst would need 2 minutes. She forged it. Walter. I stared at the river through the window. A tugboat pushing a barge upstream. Slow. Relentless. The way everything Megan had done was slow and relentless. 1 transfer at a time. 1 signature at a time. Ruth pressed her palms flat on the table. Dorothy drove that Buick until the transmission screamed. Packed lunch in a paper bag for 22 years. Bought clothes at Goodwill. Never took a vacation that cost more than a tank of gas and a cooler of sandwiches. Also, Eli would never struggle. so he would always have ground beneath his feet. Megan burned through 22 years of that woman's sacrifice in 24 months at crypto exchanges and shopping sites that shipped to secret addresses. I sat with the folder between my hands, paper and ink, holding 2 decades of Dorothy's quiet discipline reduced to speculation losses and designer bags in a P.O. box nobody knew existed. And then the final piece fell into place. Not just what Megan had done, but why Eli was beneath my floor. Not because she was cruel, or not only cruel, Eli was beneath my floor because Eli was the evidence. A living receipt proving the education money never reached education. An 11-year-old whose existence at a school in Charleston had to remain fiction because the moment anyone confirmed he was not there, every dollar, every forged signature, every crypto loss would cascade into collapse like a wall built on wet sand. My grandson was not just a prisoner. He was a budget line, an entry hidden where auditors could not reach. The only proof that $2.1 million meant for his future had been burned at altars of speculation and vanity. And the only way to keep that proof hidden was to keep the boy beneath a floor where no teacher could report his absence and no grandfather could touch his hand and find that the screen had been lying for 3 years. Ruth gripped my wrist. "What are you going to do, Walter?" "I am going to get my grandson out of that crawl space. And I am going to make sure every dollar is accounted for." She pushed the folder toward me. "Keep this somewhere she cannot reach." I drove home with it locked in the Silverado's toolbox beside my best chisels. Sharp tools that cut clean only when used at precisely the right moment. The right moment was approaching. But not yet. Not until every joint was measured. Not until the cut would be final. And no lawyer on earth could glue it back together. Friday afternoon, I was in the garage sanding a piece of cherry that did not need sanding. My hands needed wood beneath them, while my mind turned over everything I had gathered in 4 days. The receipts, the phone calls, Ruth's folder locked in the toolbox 6 feet from where I stood. Evidence stacking like lumber before a build. Each piece waiting for its place in the structure. The first knock came at the garage side door. 2 measured raps. Not Megan's rhythm. She knocked quickly, impatiently. The way someone knocks when they expect the door to open before their knuckles leave the wood. These were slow, deliberate. The knock of a man who had thought carefully about whether to knock at all. Pastor David Langford, 58. Senior pastor at Grace Baptist on Bull Street for 19 years. The man who stood over Dorothy's casket and said she lived like the oak trees on this street, wide enough to shelter everyone beneath her branches. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt. Not his Sunday clothes, his Saturday face. But his eyes carried the weight of something that did not belong to a Saturday. Walter. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Closed the door behind him. "Can we talk for a moment?" "Of course, David." He stood among my tools, hands in his pockets, looking at the cherry blank on my workbench, as if it might offer him the words he was searching for. "Walter, I cannot tell you what I know. Pastoral confidence is something I have never broken in 19 years, and I will not break it now. But I can tell you this." He met my eyes. Steady. The steadiness of a man standing on conviction, even when conviction costs him sleep. If your house is making sounds it should not make, a good carpenter does not wait for the roof to fall. He investigates. Immediately. That is all I can say. He held my gaze for 3 seconds. Put his hand on my shoulder. Squeezed once. Then walked out the side door and down the driveway without looking back. I understood exactly what David Langford had done. He had not broken confidence. He had built a door in a wall he could not tear down and left it unlocked for me to walk through. A man of God who could not speak the truth aloud, but found a way to make sure the truth had somewhere to go. I had not set the cherry blank down when the second knock came. 3 hard raps. Knuckles on wood with force behind them. The knock of a man who was done reconsidering. Hector Dominguez, 66. Retired United States Marines. 24 years. Lived next door for 9 years in a brick ranch with a flagpole in the front yard and a security system that could track a cat crossing his lawn at 3 in the morning. He carried an iPad against his chest like a shield. His face was troubled. The gray of a man carrying something he should have put down months ago. "Walter, there is something you need to see." He set the iPad on my workbench beside the cherry blank. Opened a folder labeled Exterior South. "My security camera covers my driveway and part of your south side, where the crawlspace access is. The exterior hatch. I have had the system for 2 years. 6 months ago, I noticed a pattern in the motion alerts." He tapped the screen. Night vision. Green-gray image. The azalea hedge. The crawlspace hatch. Timestamp. 1:50. 3 in the morning. A figure appeared. Megan. She carried a tray covered with a cloth. Moved quickly to the hatch. Opened the padlock with a key. Descended. The camera lost her below ground. 28 minutes later, she emerged. No tray. Carrying a small white trash bag. Closed the hatch. Replaced the lock. Returned to the house through the back door. Hector swiped to another file. Different date. Same pattern. Then another. And another. A cascade of timestamps scrolling past. 189 files, Walter. 6 months of recordings. Every single night. Sometimes twice. Always between midnight and 3:30. Always carrying something down. Always coming back with a small bag. He paused. His finger hovered over one file. He looked at me with something heavier than concern. April 17th. 3:12 in the morning. Eli's birthday. He would have turned 11. He pressed play. Megan appeared carrying something different. Not a tray. A cupcake. Single. White frosting visible even in the green footage. On top, the faint glow of a candle. One small flame flickering against the April dark. She descended carefully. Slowly. Protecting that flame from the night air, the way you protect something fragile and irreplaceable. At the bottom she paused. Looked down at the cupcake. Then disappeared below. "She baked him a cupcake," I said. My voice came from somewhere outside my body. At 3:12 in the morning, Hector nodded. 3 years running. I have April footage from all 3. Same thing each year. One cupcake. One candle. Carried down before dawn. 3 birthdays underground, 9, 10, and 11. 3 candles blown out in a space too small for a grown man to stand. Nobody sang. Nobody clapped. Nobody watched him close his eyes and wish. Then Hector opened one more file. August 15th. 2:47 in the morning. The crawlspace hatch was closed. Nothing moved on the screen. But the exterior vent on the south foundation wall was visible. A narrow rectangle of aluminum mesh set into the brick. For 11 seconds, nothing happened. Then movement behind the mesh. Quick. Small. A child's hand appeared. Fingers wrapped around a small paintbrush. The brush pushed through one of the mesh openings and made a single stroke against the outside brick. A streak of blue paint on red brick. Then the hand withdrew. 2 seconds total. As if the child knew he was not supposed to reach beyond the wall but could not help trying. Could not stop himself from touching the outside world, even if only with the tip of a brush dipped in paint he was never meant to use for this purpose. I gripped the workbench edge. Knuckles white against the oak top I had built 15 years ago for a life that made sense. "I saw that live on my phone," Hector said. "Almost called you. Almost called police. Talked myself out of it. Told myself it was a shadow. An animal. Because the alternative was something I did not know how to carry alone. Why now? Because Wednesday night your light stayed on past 3. And Thursday you were in the crawl space. I watched you go in and come out looking like a man whose foundation just cracked. I realized you already knew, and I decided I was done being a coward. You are not a coward. You are here now. That matters." He placed a USB drive on the workbench. 189 files. Time-stamped. Dated. Backed up to a cloud server. I picked it up. Small. Lighter than a finishing nail. But holding 6 months of a woman descending in darkness. 3 birthday cupcakes carried underground before dawn. And one small hand reaching through a vent with a paintbrush because touching the outside world for 2 seconds was worth any risk. 3 candles blown out alone. 3 wishes made in silence. And I was certain everyone carried the same prayer. That the storm would end. That someone above would finally hear him through the wood and the clay, and the lies his mother built between him and the sky. Saturday night. The house was dark, except for the glow of my laptop screen on the kitchen table. Megan had gone to bed at 10:20. Her door clicked shut with its usual precision. Bo lay beside my chair with his chin on my foot, his warmth against my ankle, the only thing keeping me grounded while I prepared to examine 3 years of conversations I was beginning to suspect had never happened. I opened the shared drive Megan maintained for our household. A folder labeled Family Calls. Neatly organized by date. 156 recordings. 3 years of Sunday FaceTime sessions at 6:15. Megan recorded every one. For memories, she told me once. So Eli can look back someday and see how much we loved him, even from a distance. It sounded thoughtful at the time. The kind of thing a caring mother would do. Now it sounded like evidence she never expected anyone to examine with anything but trusting eyes. I opened the most recent call. 3 weeks ago. The screen, filled with a boy's face. Brown hair, brown eyes. A smile that looked like Eli's smile. Looked like it the way a photograph of a walnut table looks like the table itself. Accurate in shape, flat in dimension. Missing every quality that makes the real thing alive. Hey, Papa. The voice was bright. Did you finish that birdhouse you were working on? I had mentioned the birdhouse 2 calls earlier. He remembered. That seemed real. Seemed like Eli. But I was not watching the way a grandfather watches anymore. I was watching the way a carpenter inspects a joint he suspects is failing, looking for gaps where the surfaces meet and do not quite bond. I played the video again. Watched his eyes. They moved. They blinked. They tracked left and right. But there was something. A pattern. The blink came after each sentence. Not during. Not before. After. Every single time. Like a response triggered by completion, rather than a reflex that happened on its own. I opened a call from 6 months ago. Same pattern. A year ago. Same. 2 years ago. Same. Then I opened a real video. Recorded before Eli supposedly left for Charleston. His 8th birthday party. Blowing out candles on the kitchen counter, while Dorothy held the camera and laughed so hard the frame shook. In that video, Eli blinked constantly, mid-sentence. Mid-laugh. The random natural blink of a living child whose body operates on impulse rather than instruction. The boy on the Sunday calls did not blink like a living child. He blinked like something told to blink. I examined the background. Every call showed the same scene. A beige wall. A bookshelf to the left. A window with blue curtains to the right. The lighting never changed. Never shifted with clouds or afternoon or a lamp turned on because someone forgot to raise the blinds. Consistent in a way that real rooms never are. Real rooms breathe. Light moves through them the way humidity moves through wood. This background was static, a painted flat on a digital stage. I zoomed in on the bookshelf. The spines were blurred. Not the natural blur of a camera prioritizing a foreground face. Blurred the way low-resolution images look when enlarged beyond their native size. No titles. No texture. Colored rectangles suggesting books without being books. A shelf that had never held a single page. I closed the video. Opened my phone browser. Searched for AI voice analysis applications. Downloaded one with high ratings and a clean interface. Uploaded a 30-second clip from the most recent call. Eli describing a drawing he made in art class. An art class that did not exist at a school that did not exist in a city he had never visited. The analysis took 40 seconds. A progress bar crawled across the screen. Then the result appeared. Red text. High probability of synthetic audio generation. Confidence level 94%. Vocal pattern inconsistencies detected in tonal transition and breath interval regularity. 94%. I uploaded a second clip. Different call. 6 months earlier. 93%. A third clip from 1 year ago. 94%. 3 years of Sunday calls. 156 of them. 3 years of smiling at a screen and saying, "I love you, buddy." 3 years of Nathan calling from Atlanta every week and asking about homework and soccer and favorite books. 3 years of a family believing they were talking to a living boy. None of it was real. The face was generated from old photographs. The voice was built from recordings Megan must have captured before that crawlspace door first closed. The background was fabricated. The blinks were programmed. A digital puppet performing every Sunday at 6:15, while the real child lay in silence beneath us. I closed the laptop. The kitchen went dark. And then the worst realization. The one that hit like a mallet against a chisel, driven too deep. Eli could hear us. Every Sunday at 6:15, Nathan and I sat in this kitchen and spoke to a screen. Our voices carried through the oak floor, the way sound carries through any hardwood structure. Through the joists, through the subfloor, through 4 feet of crawlspace air, into that plywood room where my grandson lay in the dark. He heard everything. Every Sunday. His father's voice saying, "Good night, son." My voice saying, "I love you, buddy." Talking to a ghost that wore his face and spoke in a voice assembled from recordings of a boy who was 7. Having conversations with software while the real child pressed his ear against the ceiling and listened to his family love something that was not him. 3 years of hearing his father say goodnight to a machine. Close enough through the wood to recognize every word. Close enough to answer. But unable to make a sound. Because his mother told him a storm had destroyed the world above. Because she told him thunder lived inside loud voices. That if he spoke above a whisper, the thunder would hear him through the cracks in the wood, and it would kill his grandfather and his dog. So he lay silent. Every Sunday at 6:15, listening to his father love a ghost, listening to me tell stories to empty air, and pressing his hands against the ceiling to feel the vibration of voices that belonged to people who would have torn through the floor with their bare hands if they had known he was 10 feet below. I sat in the dark kitchen, Bo pressed against my leg. Above me the clock ticked. Below me a boy who had heard his father's voice every week for 3 years, without being able to call back. I had one more night of this. One more night before I could end it. And every second of that night would cost me something I could never recover. Sunday night, 11:23. The kitchen held nothing but darkness, and the tick of the clock above the stove, and the sound of Bo's breathing beside my chair. Megan had gone to bed at 10:15. I waited 68 minutes to be certain she was asleep. Listened for the rhythm of her breathing to deepen and slow through the wall between our bedrooms. Then, I picked up my phone. 2 calls. Both necessary. Both irreversible. The way a cross cut through a board is irreversible. Once the blade passes through the grain, the 2 halves can never be one piece again. You can glue them, clamp them, sand the joint until it disappears to the eye. But the wood knows it was cut. And so does the carpenter. I called Nathan first. He answered on the 3rd ring. The groggy confusion of a man pulled from sleep he thought was safe. "Hey, Dad. Everything okay?" "Me, Joe." I kept my voice level. Steady. The way you hold a straight edge when the line you are drawing determines whether the whole build comes out true. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think before you answer." A pause. Sheets moving. A lamp clicking. He was sitting up. awake now, hearing something in my voice that sleep could not explain away. Okay, what is it? When was the last time you saw Eli in person? Not on a screen, not through a camera, in person. Touched his hand, felt his arms around your neck, smelled his hair after a bath. Silence. 3 seconds. 5. 8. The sound of a man searching his memory for something he had never thought to question. The way you never think to check the foundation of a house that stands perfectly plumb. Dad. What is this about? Just answer me, Nathan. Please. More silence. Then slowly. The voice of a man whose feet are beginning to sink into ground he believed was solid. 3 years ago. When Megan drove him to Charleston. I was going to visit that first Christmas. But Megan said the program discouraged family contact during the adjustment period. Then everything went virtual, and I kept planning to go. But work kept scheduling over the dates, and Megan said spring would be better, and then his voice dissolved. Dad, why are you asking me this? I pressed my palm flat against the kitchen table. Oak beneath my hand. Dorothy's counter. Cold and real. When is your next planned visit? This Christmas. Nathan said it quietly. Megan finally said the school relaxed their policy. I booked a flight to Charleston for December 20th. December 20th. 6 weeks away. Enough time for Megan to build another layer. Another excuse. Another wall between a father and his son. Nathan, I said carefully, something is very wrong. I cannot explain everything tonight. Not over the phone. But I need you to trust me. Do not say anything to Megan. Do not change your routine. Do not call her. Do not text anything different than what you normally would. Can you do that, Dad? His voice cracked on the single syllable. The sound a board makes when the weight exceeds what it was built to hold. You are scaring me. I know. And I am sorry. But I need you to trust me. The way you trusted your mother. 5 seconds of silence. Then 3 words, carrying the full weight of a son, choosing to believe his father in the dark. Okay, Dad. I trust you. I held those words. Set them down gently inside me the way you set a cornerstone. Knowing everything built after this moment would rest on top of them. Thank you, Mijo. I will call you tomorrow. Before noon. I promise. I ended the call. Set the phone on the table. Stared at the clock. 11:39. The red numbers pulsing in the dark. I dialed the second number. Detective Angela Pratt. Ruth had given me her card at the cafe 2 days ago. Special Crimes Unit. Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Police. 21 years on the force. A woman Ruth described as someone who understands what locked doors and forged documents and missing children mean. Who had spent her career measuring the distance between what people present and what is real. She answered on the second ring. Alert. Clear. The voice of a professional accustomed to receiving calls before midnight that reshaped the remainder of the week. Detective Pratt, this is Walter Briggs. Ruth Clarkson gave me your name. I have evidence that my 11-year-old grandson is being held against his will beneath my home. I have financial records showing fraud, forged documents, 6 months of surveillance footage, and digital analysis showing that 3 years of video calls with my grandson are synthetically generated. A brief pause. The pause of someone recalibrating the evening. Tell me everything, Mr. Briggs. Start at the beginning. So I told her. Every joint. Every measurement, every crack in the structure that had led me here. I started with Bo clawing the floor on night 43 and walked through every discovery since. The new wood, the polyurethane adhesive, the crawlspace room, Megan's nightly descents at 147, the schools that never heard Eli's name, the stock photographs, the Amazon receipts, Ruth's forensic accounting showing 1.7 million funneled to crypto platforms and shopping sites. Hector's 189 time-stamped recordings. The birthday cupcakes at 3:12 in the morning. The child's hand, reaching through the vent with a paintbrush, and the AI analysis confirming 94% probability that every Sunday call for 3 years was synthetic. I delivered it the way I build. One piece at a time. No gaps. No speculation. Every joint tight. Every course level. When I finished, Pratt was quiet for 3 seconds. Processing. Building her own structure from what I had provided. Then she said, "We are coming." She asked 3 questions. Is the child in immediate physical danger tonight? Is the suspect currently in the home? Will you be available at 7 in the morning? I answered each. No immediate danger based on the nightly pattern. Yes, Megan would be home. Yes, I would be standing on my own front porch, ready to open whatever needed opening. 7 a.m., Mr. Briggs. I will have a warrant signed by then. Officers present. Forensics on standby. Everything by the book. Do not confront her. Do not alert her. Do not attempt to access that room tonight. Can you give me 7 hours? I can give you 7 hours. A pause. Quieter now. You documented everything. Logbook. Receipts. Timeline. Most people would have torn through that floor the first night. I thought about it. Every hour since Tuesday. But you did not. No. Because a wall torn down in anger can be rebuilt by a good lawyer. A wall torn down with evidence stays down forever. Silence. Then, 7 a.m. And the line went quiet. I set the phone on the table. 11:51. 7 hours and 9 minutes until the warrant arrived. Beau lay beside my chair with his ear pressed against the oak floor. The way he had pressed it every night for over 1,000 nights, listening, keeping vigil over something only he could detect. The most patient witness in this house. The one who never stopped telling the truth even when no one listened. I reached down and placed my hand on his head. Good boy, Beau. Tomorrow. His tail thumped once against the leg of my chair. 7 hours. But I was not going to spend them sleeping. I was not going to spend them waiting. Because before the sun rose over the live oaks on Abercorn Street, before the warrant was signed and the officers dispatched, I had one more thing to do. Not for the police. Not for the evidence. Not for the case Pratt would build with her team. For Eli. For a boy who had waited 1,095 nights for someone to knock on the other side of his ceiling. Tonight, I would be that someone, and I would not make him wait until morning to know he was no longer alone. 11:58. I stood in the kitchen with bare feet on the oak floor I had laid 41 years ago. The house was silent around me. Megan's breathing came faintly through the wall. Slow, deep, the breathing of someone who believed her secrets were still mortared tight. Beau stood beside me, looking at the spot. Always the spot. His tail low, his ears forward, as if he knew tonight was different. That tonight the scratching would finally mean something more than unanswered longing. I knelt and placed my hand on his head. Stay here, boy. I will bring him to you. His tail thumped once. He lay down with his chin on his paws, eyes fixed on the floor, waiting the way. He had waited every night for 3 years. But tonight would be the last time. I pulled back the area rug, folded it neatly against the island base. Beneath it, the cuts Megan had made in my oak were visible in the dim light from the stove hood. A rectangle, approximately 3 feet by 2 feet. Brass hinges recessed into the wood on the far side. A small ring pull flush with the surface. I gripped the ring. Pulled. The hatch opened on oiled hinges. Silent, well-maintained. The hardware of a woman who descended 1,095 times and could not afford a single squeak. Below, darkness. And the smell. Damp earth. The particular mineral scent of Georgia red clay that has never dried completely, mixed with something else. Lavender. Faint, but present. Rising from below like a confession the house could no longer keep. I lowered myself through the hatch. bare feet finding the clay. Cool. Damp. It pressed between my toes the way wet sand presses at the edge of a retreating tide. The crawlspace ceiling was 4 feet above. I could not stand, could only crouch and move forward on hands and knees the way a man enters a space not built for standing. The darkness was nearly complete. Only the faint amber glow from the kitchen above filtering through the open hatch behind me. And ahead, 20 feet ahead, the red LED of the keypad, a single point of light in the black. Steady, unwavering, like a heartbeat made visible. I moved toward it, hands pressing into clay, knees leaving impressions that would still be there when the police came in 7 hours. The joists above me held the weight of the house I built, the floor I laid, the life I lived for 41 years without knowing what lived below. 12 feet from the hatch. 15. The LED growing larger, brighter. The plywood partition becoming visible in its glow. And with every foot closer, the smell of lavender growing stronger. The smell of crayons. The closed-in human warmth of a space that held a living body. I reached the door. Hollow core. 32 inches. The keypad beside it, glowing its constant red. I did not need the code. I was not here to open the door. Not tonight. That belonged to morning, to warrants and officers, and the legal precision that would ensure this door never closed again. I was here to knock. I pressed my palm flat against the door. Not cold. Not the ambient temperature of clay in October. Warmer. A degree. Maybe 3. The warmth of a child's body, heating enclosed air on the other side. Transferred through hollow core wood the way heat transfers through any barrier too thin to fully insulate. I pressed my ear against the surface, held my breath, listened with everything 44 years of working with wood had taught my ears to hear. Breathing. Quick. Shallow. The breathing of a small chest. Not sleeping. Awake. Awake at midnight. The way children are awake when sleep has become unreliable, when the dark holds things they cannot predict, when the only safe strategy is to stay alert and wait for whatever comes next. My eyes burned. I pressed my forehead against the wood, bone against hollow core. The cheapest barrier between a grandfather and his grandson. 32 inches of nothing, and 3 years of everything. I raised my right hand, curled it into a loose fist. And I knocked. Not randomly. Not urgently. A rhythm. 3 beats. Spaced evenly. The first 3 notes of a melody that had lived in this house longer than the walls themselves. You are my 3 knocks. The rhythm Dorothy hummed while scrambling eggs on Saturday mornings. The song she sang to Eli every bedtime. The melody she whispered into his hair when thunder rolled across the savannah sky and he climbed into her lap and pressed his face against her chest because her heartbeat was the safest sound in the world. You are my knock. 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 Then silence. 5 seconds. The longest 5 seconds I have ever measured. Longer than any board I have ever cut. Longer than the pause between Dorothy's last breath and the one that never came. 10 seconds. My hand trembled against the wood. My forehead pressed harder. Listening. Listening the way Bo listened every night. With his ear against the oak above. The way I should have listened 3 years ago. Then, 3 knocks. From the other side. Small. Light. The knocks of a child whose hands have learned to be gentle with sound, whose knuckles have been trained to whisper against surfaces because noise brings consequences. But matching the rhythm. Exactly. Perfectly. Sunday shine. My. Knock. 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 He remembered. 3 years sealed in a room beneath the earth, and he remembered the song his grandmother sang him every night before the world went dark. I could not breathe. My chest locked. My hand pressed against the door where his knock still vibrated in the wood. His knuckles on one side, my palm on the other. 3 inches of hollow core between us. 3 years of silence broken by 6 knocks and a melody that had outlived the woman who sang it. Then a voice. Thin. So quiet I felt it more than heard it. A whisper pressed against wood, the way a prayer is pressed against the hands that hold it. Papaf? 1 word. 2 syllables. The weight of 1,095 days compressed into a sound no louder than a page turning. A question and an answer. And a plea, wrapped in the smallest voice I had ever heard from a boy who used to fill this house with laughter loud enough to rattle the windows in their frames. My forehead stayed against the door. Tears ran down my face onto the wood, into the grain, soaking into hollow core, the way moisture soaks into any surface that has been dry too long. I am here, sweetheart. It is Papa. I am right here. Movement on the other side. Small feet on a surface. Not clay. Something softer. A mat or a blanket laid over the ground. The sound of a child moving toward the place where my voice came through. Papa. Closer now. Almost touching the other side of the door. Is the storm over? Mommy said the thunder would hear me if I talked loud. She said it lives in the cracks, in the wood, that if I make noise it comes through and hurts everyone above. Every word a stone laid on my chest, each one placed with the precision of a child who had rehearsed this explanation 1,000 times to make sense of a world reduced to 10 feet by 8 feet and a ceiling he could touch with his fingertips. I pressed my hand harder against the door. Felt the faint vibration of his breath on the other side. There is no storm, Eli. I said it slowly, clearly, each word given its full weight, because every syllable had to carry 3 years of truth into a space that had held nothing but lies. There never was a storm. The air outside is safe. The water is safe. The sky is clear. It has been clear every single day since you came down here. Silence. His breathing changed. Faster. The breathing of a child whose world has just shifted the way a house shifts on its foundation after decades. Imperceptible to most. Devastating to those who know what it means. Mommy lied? Not angry. Not accusatory. Confused. The pure bewilderment of a boy who trusted the only adult voice he heard for 3 years. Who believed because believing was the only option available when you are 8 years old, and the person feeding you is the person explaining the world. Yes, sweetheart. She lied. About everything. A pause. 5 seconds. I heard him processing. The sound of a child rearranging the furniture inside a room he had built from false information. Taking down walls he thought were load-bearing and discovering the structure still stood without them. Then he spoke again. Quietly, but with something new in his voice. Something that sounded like the first crack of light under a door that has been shut too long. Bo scratches the floor every night. Above me, I hear him, his nails on the wood, every night at the same time. I put my ear on the ceiling and listen. It is how I know you are still up there. It is how I know the storm did not get you. My hand slid down the door. I pressed both palms flat against it, trying to reach through the wood the way sound reaches through, the way love should be able to reach through any barrier ever built. Bo has been trying to reach you. Every single night. For 3 years. I know. Eli's voice was barely audible. I hear him, and I knock back sometimes. Very soft, so the thunder will not hear. But I think Bo hears because he scratches harder after I knock. 43 nights. Bo clawed the floor while I pulled him away. And beneath that floor, my grandson knocked back. A secret conversation between a dog and a boy. Conducted through 3 inches of oak every night at 2 in the morning, while I slept 20 feet away and understood nothing. Then Eli said something that broke me in a place I did not know could break. Papa, I can hear you every morning. The cabinet opens first. Then the coffee bag crinkles. Then the water runs. Then the pot makes a sound like breathing. Then your chair scrapes when you sit down. I put my ear on the ceiling and count. Cabinet. Bag. Water. pot, chair, 5 sounds. Every morning. It is my favorite part of the day. It means you are still up there. It means the storm did not take you while I was sleeping. 1,095 mornings. I stood in that kitchen grinding beans and pouring water and sitting down with my newspaper, and 10 feet below me, a boy pressed his ear against the ceiling and counted my sounds like a rosary. 5 beads. Cabinet. Bag. Water. Pot. Chair. A ritual performed in darkness to confirm that the world above still existed, that his grandfather was still alive, that the thunder his mother invented had not yet taken the last person who connected him to anything real. I could not speak. Tears ran down my face and dripped onto the clay beneath my knees, soaked into Georgia earth that had held this secret for 3 years without telling me. When I found my voice, it came out rougher than I intended. Broken at the edges the way wood breaks when the grain is cross and the force is too sudden. Listen to me, Eli. Tomorrow morning, very early, people are coming. Good people. Police officers. They are going to open this door, and you will never be in this room again. Do you understand? A pause. Then quietly, okay, Papa, I will be right here. The first person you see when that door opens. I promise. On Nana's name. Then the question that told me everything about what mattered most to a boy who had spent 3 years listening to the world through a ceiling. Will Bo be there? He asked about the dog before he asked about the sun. Because Bo's claws on the oak above his head were the only voice that reached him every night. The only proof that love still existed on the other side of the wood. 43 nights of scratching. 1,095 nights before that. Every single one. A message from a golden retriever who never gave up on the boy below. He will be the first face you see after mine. I promise. A small sound. Almost a laugh. Almost. The ghost of what a laugh used to be. Before 3 years in the dark. Compressed it into something quieter. Okay. Good. I missed him. His fur smells like the outside. Movement. The sound of a thin mattress receiving weight, a body curling, the soft press of something held tight against a chest. Sawdust. Dorothy's bear. Still with him. Still held the way a drowning person holds the one thing that floats. Buff? Yes, sweetheart. Will you stay? Just for a little while? I fall asleep faster when I know someone is on the other side. I press my back against the door. Slid down until I sat on the damp clay with my spine against hollow core, and my legs stretched out beneath the joists of my own kitchen. I am not going anywhere. I will be right here when you wake up. His breathing slowed. Not immediately. Gradually. The way a child's breathing slows when the thing they were afraid of has been named and the name has taken away its power. Storm, thunder, poison in the air. All of it dissolving in the space between one breath and the next, because a voice on the other side of the door said, "There is no storm," and meant it. I stayed. Counting his breaths the way I once counted boards before a build. 100, 200, 300. Each one proof he was alive. Each one a promise that morning was coming. That the door would open. That I would keep my word. Above me, through the hatch I left open, I heard Bo, lying on the kitchen floor directly above us, his tail thumping softly against the oak. He knew. He had always known. And tonight, for the first time, the boy below and the dog above and the grandfather between them were all awake in the same truth. I sat on Georgia clay beneath a house I built with love, back against a door that held my grandson. And I waited for morning. The way good wood waits for the hand that will finally sand it smooth. Patient. Still. Knowing that when the light came, everything it touched would sing. I do not remember the exact moment night became morning. Only that the darkness behind my eyelids shifted from black to amber, and I opened my eyes to pale light filtering through the open hatch above. Dawn. October in Savannah. Gold angled low through live oaks until the Spanish moss glowed like something unfinished. I had spent the night on clay, back against a door, counting breaths that had steadied into the deep rhythm of a child, sleeping safely for the first time in 3 years. My knees ached. My back protested. But my hands were steady. I rose, pressed my palm against the door one final time, felt the warmth still there. Soon I whispered. I crawled back and pulled myself through the hatch into the kitchen. Bo was waiting, exactly where I left him. His eyes met mine, and his tail moved once. I closed the hatch, replaced the rug, made coffee. Not because I wanted it, because Eli might be listening. Cabinet, bag, water, pot, chair. 5 sounds. One last time as a coded message. Tomorrow, it would just be coffee again. 7:08. 3 vehicles turned onto Abercorn. 2 unmarked sedans. 1 patrol car. No sirens. They pulled to the curb with quiet precision. Detective Pratt emerged from the lead sedan. Gray blazer. Badge on belt. Mr. Briggs. We have the warrant. Is the suspect inside? Upstairs. 2nd bedroom. And the child? Below the kitchen. Crawlspace access under the area rug beside the island. Pratt nodded to her team. 2 officers moved toward the front door. A 3rd circled rear. A forensics woman followed. You do not have to be present for the entry, sir. I built this house. My grandson is under that floor. I am going down. She studied me 1 second, then nodded. We entered. Megan's voice came from the stairs. Confused, then sharp. The voice of someone whose rehearsed calm has been punctured. What is happening? Dad, what is going on? An officer stepped into her path. Ma'am, we have a warrant to search this property. I did not look at her. Walked through the kitchen. Bo stood on the rug, tail rigid. Every muscle pointed downward like a compass finding true north. I pulled back the rug, opened the hatch, descended for the last time with this purpose. Pratt and the forensics woman followed. I reached the door. LED red. The forensics woman connected a device to the keypad. 30 seconds. A beep. The LED turned green. The deadbolt clicked with a sound that echoed off clay like a bell struck after 3 years of silence. Pratt stepped aside. She understood. I gripped the handle. Turned. Pushed. Light poured in. And the first thing I saw was the walls. Every wall. Every inch of plywood, painted white and covered completely with drawings. Hundreds. Taped. Pinned. Layered like growth rings in oak. Trees. Dogs. A kitchen with a tall man at a counter. A workshop with sawdust floating in golden light. And doors. Open doors. Dozens of them, all filled with yellow crayon sunlight. As if by drawing them enough times he could will them into existence. 10 feet by 8 feet. A narrow mattress. Thin blanket. A small table with a lamp and books. Dorothy's books. The Birdwatcher's Guide. The Woodworking Encyclopedia. The Bible with pressed magnolia petals, left with a boy like provisions in a vessel crossing an ocean of dark. And in the far corner sat my grandson, thin. Brown hair past his shoulders in tangles, faded blue shirt, gray sweatpants, arms wrapped around sawdust, button eyes and flannel ribbon, held against his chest the way you hold the one thing that kept you breathing. He looked at the light, at Pratt, then at me, Dorothy's eyes in an 11-year-old face. Papa. The storm is over? I dropped to my knees on the clay. It is over, Eli. Come here. He set sawdust on the mattress. Stood on legs that trembled the way new wood trembles before it finds its bearing weight. 1 step. 2. The steps of someone who has dreamed of a door opening so many times he cannot trust it while awake. Then he was against my chest. Arms around my neck. Face in my shoulder. He weighed nothing. every rib through his shirt, every vertebra beneath my hands. You came. His voice broke, in places an 11-year-old voice should never break. You said tomorrow, and you came. I held him, lifted him, carried him through the crawl space, up through the hatch, into the kitchen where cold coffee sat on the counter and morning light fell across oak and golden bars, through the hallway, past officers and a woman in handcuffs whose voice I could no longer hear, out the front door, into October sun. Bo was on the porch, waiting, the way he had waited every day for 3 years. When he saw Eli, the sound that came from him was not a bark, a whimper that built from the deepest part of his chest. He launched forward, nose finding Eli's hand, his face, licking tears and dirt and 3 years of absence off the boy he had been calling to through the floor every single night. I set Eli on the porch. He dropped to his knees, and Bo pressed into him full body, golden fur against blue shirt, tail wagging so hard his entire back half moved. Eli wrapped both arms around Bo's neck and buried his face in the fur and breathed deep, the smell of grass and oak leaves and a dog who never stopped believing. Then Eli lifted his face, looked at the sky, the live oaks, the light through Spanish moss, the world that existed above him for 1,095 days while he drew it from memory on plywood walls. Real son, Papa. He said it like a prayer confirmed. Real son. The ambulance took us to Memorial Health. 11 minutes across Savannah. Eli sat in my lap on the gurney because the paramedic tried to separate us. And Eli gripped my shirt with both fists and said no with a voice that left no room for negotiation. So I held him, his head against my chest, his fingers wrapped in the fabric of my flannel. Bo rode in the front seat because the paramedic was a dog person and understood that separating this boy from this animal would require a cruelty no medical protocol could justify. They admitted Eli to a room on the 4th floor, a window facing east, sunlight pouring through. The first thing he did was walk to that window and press both palms flat against the glass, the way Dorothy used to press her palms against the walls of our house, feeling, confirming. It is warm, he said. The glass is warm. I sat beside his bed while the nurses checked him. Heart rate elevated. Blood pressure low. Weight 31% below normal for his age and height. I watched the nurse's jaw tighten when she wrapped the cuff around his arm. This child had not stood in sunlight for a very long time. 2 hours and 14 minutes after my call, Nathan appeared in the doorway. Suit wrinkled. No tie. He had driven from Atlanta without stopping, without changing. The first thing he did was breathe. A gasping inhale, like a man surfacing after being held underwater. His eyes found Eli, and everything in him collapsed. Eli was sitting up in bed, orange juice in one hand, my hand in the other. Bo curled at his feet, because the nurses had given up trying to remove a 70-pound golden retriever from a hospital bed. Eli looked at the man in the doorway. His father, the voice he heard through wood every Sunday without being able to reach back. Daddy. Nathan crossed the room in 3 strides. His knees hit the floor beside the bed. He pulled Eli against him, and the sound that came was not crying. It was something beyond crying. Something geological. The sound of a man breaking along a fault line he never knew existed. They held each other for a long time, Nathan's shoulders shaking, Eli's thin arms around his father's neck, the heart monitor beeping steady, sunlight moving across the floor. Then Eli pulled back, looked at his father's wet face, and asked the question that would live inside Nathan for the rest of his life. Daddy, why didn't you come find me? Simple. Honest. No accusation. The pure confusion of a child who waited 3 years for a door to open and cannot understand why the people who loved him did not open it sooner. Nathan's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Because what answer was there? Because I trusted a screen. Because I believed your mother. Because I planned to visit at Christmas and thought 6 weeks was close enough. He pulled Eli back against his chest. "I am here now, buddy. I am here. And I am never leaving again." That question would live inside my son like a crack in a load-bearing beam. Not because he could not answer it, but because the answer was too simple. He did not come because he believed. Because believing was easier than measuring, and the simplest questions carry the heaviest weight. 2 weeks later, a Tuesday afternoon, I sat in a waiting room on the 4th floor with a paper cup of coffee that tasted like nothing. Behind a door painted with cartoon dolphins, Eli was speaking to Dr. Rachel Simmons for the 4th time. The first 3 sessions had been mostly silence. Simmons told me that was normal. Children who have experienced prolonged isolation need time to find their voices again. Speaking after years of enforced quiet feels dangerous, like stepping onto a floor you are not sure will hold. But today was different. Simmons came out at 3:40. Sat beside me. "Eli talked today. He gave permission for me to share it with you. He said Papa should hear this." She opened her notebook. "Eli told me that on the first day, Megan brought him down through the hatch and said they were playing a special hiding game. Over the following days, she told him a terrible storm had struck Savannah. A superstorm. That the wind carried thunder that could get inside your body through your ears. That the thunder was alive. That it lived in loud sounds. That if Eli spoke above a whisper, the thunder would hear him through the cracks in the wood above, and it would come through and kill Papa and kill Bo." My hands clenched against my knees. Simmons read from her notes. Eli's exact words. "Mommy said the thunder lives in big voices. She said if I yell or talk loud or sing or laugh too hard, it hears me through the wood and it comes down like lightning and it hurts everyone above. So I have to be mouse quiet. She said mice survive because they never let anything hear them." 3 years of trained silence. 3 years of a child believing his own voice was a weapon capable of killing the people he loved most. Simmons continued. He could hear Bo scratching the floor every night. He said that sound was proof that Papa and Bo were still alive, that the thunder had not found them yet. He timed his breathing to Bo's rhythm. Slow when Bo was slow. Fast when Bo scratched harder. She paused. "He also described your morning routine. Specifically, he said, the cabinet opens, the bag crinkles, the water runs, the pot breathes, the chair scrapes." He counted those 5 sounds every morning for 3 years. He called them his clock. I stared at the wall. Cartoon dolphins. Smiling starfish. And my grandson had mapped my entire morning ritual through 3 inches of oak and used it as proof the world still turned. Simmons closed the notebook, then reopened to a final page. At the end of today's session, I told him there was never a storm, that the thunder was not real, that sound cannot hurt anyone. I asked him, "Do you believe me?" He said yes. I said, "Then you are allowed to make any sound you want, as loud as you want. Right now." Simmons looked at me. Her professional composure shifted. He opened his mouth, and he screamed. Not a scream of fear, a roar, from somewhere deep in his chest. 8 seconds. The walls shook with it. Then he stopped, and he smiled, and he said, "It did not bring thunder." I closed my eyes. Let the tears come. 8 seconds. 3 years of silence broken in one defiant roar. And he laughed afterward. Because his voice brought nothing but its own echo, bouncing free across a room full of windows that opened whenever he wanted. They brought the drawings to the courtroom in 4 cardboard boxes. Each box was the kind you buy at the post office for shipping books. Each one held between 70 and 75 sheets of paper. Construction paper, printer paper, napkins, the backs of cereal boxes, paper towels that had dried stiff with crayon wax. 287 pieces, 287 days, when my grandson picked up whatever he could find and drew what he could not say. The prosecution laid them across 3 folding tables in the front of the courtroom. Chatham County Superior Court. 4 months after the morning we opened that door. Judge Patricia Hollowell, presiding. Megan sat at the defense table in a gray blazer with her hair pulled back and her hands folded, and I will tell you now that her face showed nothing. Not shame, not fear, not recognition. She looked at those drawings, the way a person looks at a restaurant menu in a language they do not read. I sat in the second row. Nathan beside me. Bo was not allowed inside, but he waited in the truck with the windows down and a bowl of water. Pastor Langford sat behind us. Ruth Clarkson sat 3 rows back with a manila folder on her lap that contained 22 months of financial records. The prosecutor was a woman named Dana Whitfield, 41 years old. She had a voice like a saw blade that had been sharpened properly, clean and precise, and it cut without tearing. She picked up the first drawing and held it toward the jury. It showed a rectangle, brown crayon on white paper. Inside the rectangle was a smaller rectangle, a door. The door had no handle. Above the door was a red circle, the LED. Below the door was a line of yellow, light leaking in from the other side. That was all. A room, a locked door, and light that belonged to someone else. 167 of the drawings contained doors. Dana told the jury this number slowly. 167 times my grandson drew an exit he could not use. 89 drawings showed a shape with 4 legs and a tail scratching at a line. Bo on the floor above. 54 drawings showed a table with a rectangle on top. My workbench. The sander. The tools he heard me use on Saturday mornings while he lay 10 feet below and listened to his grandfather build things for other people's homes. 31 drawings showed a woman with no face. She had arms and legs and hair, but where her features should have been, there was only blank paper. I do not know if that was intentional, or if Eli simply could not remember what kindness looked like on a human face. And 9 drawings showed a circle with lines coming out of it. The sun. Only 9. In 1,095 days underground, my grandson drew the sun 9 times, as if he was forgetting what it looked like, as if each day without it erased a single ray, until soon there would be nothing left to draw. Dana called her witnesses across 4 days. Ruth Clarkson presented the financial evidence. She sat in that witness box with her reading glasses and her folder, and she walked the jury through every withdrawal, every forged signature, every shell company and crypto transfer. $1.7 million moved through accounts like water through a cracked foundation. The jury wrote notes. They wrote many notes. Hector Dominguez presented 189 video files. Time-stamped. Dated. Showing Megan descending at 1:53 each morning and ascending 28 minutes later. 3 birthday cupcakes at 3:12 in the morning. A child's hand painting through a vent. The jury watched 17 of those clips in silence. One woman in the back row pressed her hand over her mouth and did not remove it for 6 minutes. Detective Pratt walked them through the voice analysis. 156 video calls, 94% synthetic. A grandmother's lullaby, recreated by software. A boy's voice manufactured so that a father in Atlanta could believe his son was alive and well and attending a school that did not exist. The defense argued diminished capacity. They said Megan had a gambling addiction and mounting debt and panic, and that she never intended permanent harm. They said she fed the child. They said the room had ventilation and light and books. They said these things as if feeding a prisoner makes the cage disappear. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 40 minutes. They returned with guilty on all 8 counts. Unlawful imprisonment of a minor, fraud, forgery, identity theft, wire fraud, embezzlement, child endangerment, criminal use of artificial intelligence to deceive. Judge Hollowell sentenced Megan to 22 years. No parole eligibility for 14. She said one sentence before the bailiff led Megan away. She said, "This court has seen many kinds of cruelty, but the weaponization of a child's trust in silence is among the most deliberate this bench has encountered." Megan did not look at me when they took her out. She did not look at Nathan. She looked at the table, where the drawings were still spread across the surface. 287 prayers in crayon. 167 doors drawn by a child who believed that if he was quiet enough and patient enough, one of them would eventually open. One of them did. It just took a dog who would not stop scratching and an old man who finally got on his knees and listened. The night after the verdict, I came home and stood in my kitchen. The floor was still there. The oak I had laid in 1983 was still there beneath my feet, worn smooth by 40 years of boots and bare soles and a dog's nails. The section Megan had replaced was gone now. The police had cut it out as evidence during the investigation. In its place was a square of plywood, temporary, ugly, honest. I preferred it. A patch does not pretend to be original. It admits that something was removed. Bo walked to the plywood square and sniffed it once. Then he walked to his bed in the corner and lay down. He did not scratch. He did not whine. He did not press his nose to the seam between old and new. For the first time in 1,095 nights, my dog slept flat on his side with his legs stretched out and his breathing slow and even. He had nothing left to say. The boy was no longer beneath us. I made coffee at 5:14 the next morning. The pot hissed the way it always did. The cabinet opened with the same creak. The water ran through the same pipes Dorothy and I had installed before Reagan left office. Every sound was the same, but the house felt different. It felt lighter, as if someone had removed a beam that had been carrying weight in the wrong direction for 3 years, and the structure had finally settled into its true position. Nathan called it 7. He said Eli slept through the night for the first time without waking. He said Eli asked for eggs and toast and ate them at the table by the window. He said Eli asked if he could go outside after breakfast. Nathan said yes. Eli walked into the backyard and stood in the grass for 4 minutes without moving. Just stood there, feeling the blades between his toes and the morning air on his arms and the sound of birds that were not recorded and not played through a speaker and not filtered through 4 feet of earth and wood. I drove to Nathan's house in Pooler every Saturday. It was a small place, 3 bedrooms, a yard with a live oak in the back. But it had windows in every room. Nathan made sure of that. Every room had at least 2 windows, and none of them had curtains for the first 6 months. Eli wanted to see outside from wherever he stood. He wanted proof that the world continued, even when he was not watching it. Eli started school in January. Chatham County enrolled him in 4th grade at Marsh Point Elementary. He was 10 years old, and he had not sat in a classroom since he was 7. The principal called me after the first week and said Eli was reading at a 7th grade level. She said he had read every book in that room beneath my kitchen. Dorothy's books. The ones she kept on the shelf beside her bourbon and her Bible. Eli had read them all. Some of them twice. Some 3 times. In the dark with a flashlight while the world above him slept. By spring, he was in 5th grade reading groups. By summer, he tested into the gifted program for language arts. My grandson had taught himself to read in captivity the way a tree teaches itself to grow toward whatever crack of light exists. Not because it chose to, because it had no other option. And life insists on direction. 2 years passed. Eli turned 11 on April 17th. We celebrated in Nathan's backyard with a cake that had 11 candles, and we sang in full voice, and nobody whispered, and the sky did not crack open. Bo was there. He was 10 now, and his muzzle had gone white, and he moved slower on the stairs, but he still found Eli in every room. He still pressed his nose against the boy's knee when Eli sat down. Some bonds do not require language. They only require presence and time. On a Saturday in October, I brought a piece of white oak to Nathan's garage. It was quarter sawn, tight grain, the kind Henderson's mill used to cut before they closed. I set it on the sawhorses, and I handed Eli a piece of sandpaper. 120 grit. Medium. Good for shaping without removing too much. Sand with the grain, I said. Never against. The wood will tell you which direction it wants to go. Eli took the paper, and he ran it along the board. Slow at first. Then finding the rhythm. The sound filled the garage the way it used to fill my shop, that whisper of grit against fiber. That conversation between hand and material. He sanded for 10 minutes without speaking. Then he stopped and ran his fingers along the surface, and he looked up at me. "It is smooth now, Papa. But I can still feel where it was rough." I nodded. That is what wood remembers. You cannot erase the grain. You can only make it soft enough to touch, without pain. He thought about this. He ran his hand along the board again. Bo lay at his feet with his chin on the concrete. The October sun came through the open garage door and landed across the oak in a long gold stripe. "We are building a table," I told him. "For your room. So you have a place to draw. That is not a floor." Eli smiled. He picked up the sandpaper and he went back to work. After 20 minutes, he said something that I will carry with me for whatever years I have left on this earth. He said it quietly, not because he was afraid of thunder, but because some things are meant to be said softly. "This wood sings when you sand it, Papa. Just like you told me. It sings because somebody is paying attention to it." I did not answer right away. I stood in that garage with sawdust on my boots and my grandson's voice in my ears, and I thought about Dorothy. I thought about the day she ran her hand along the kitchen counter and said, "This house has grain." I thought about 1,095 nights when the wood held my grandson's weight and his breath and his drawings and his silence. The wood had kept him, not safe, but alive. Alive long enough for a dog to insist and an old man to listen and a door to finally open. "Yes," I said. "It sings because somebody is paying attention." We sanded together until the light turned amber, and Bo's tail thumped once against the floor in his sleep. The oak grew smooth beneath our hands. It remembered everything, and it forgave what it could. I want to talk to you now. Not as a character in a story. Not as a grandfather, or a carpenter, or a man who found something terrible beneath his kitchen floor. I want to talk to you as one person to another. Because this story is finished, but the lesson inside it is not. The lesson lives. It breathes the way my grandson breathed beneath that oak for 3 years. And if I do not say it clearly, then I have failed the one duty that remains. The first lesson is this: trust your discomfort. For 43 nights, my dog told me something was wrong. He scratched at that floor with the same urgency every single night, and I pulled him away. I said, "Hush." I said, "Stop." I said, "It is nothing." I chose comfort over truth, because truth required me to kneel down and press my ear against the wood and admit that the life I believed I was living might be a lie. Discomfort is not an accident. It is not anxiety or age or paranoia. Discomfort is the body's way of saying, measure twice because something does not fit. When your gut tells you a board is warped, you do not install it and hope the floor forgives you. You pull it out. You look at it under light. You trust what your hands already know. If something in your life feels wrong, do not explain it away. Do not let someone else give you a reason that is easier to carry than the truth. Raccoons do not cry. Gas leaks do not breathe. And the people who offer quick explanations for things that disturb you at 2 in the morning are sometimes the same people who built the room you have not yet found. The second lesson is this: measure people the way you measure wood. A good board and a rotten board look the same from 5 feet away. They are the same color, the same shape, the same length. But when you get close, when you run your hand along the grain, you feel the difference. Soft spots, punky fibers, places where moisture got in and decay followed. People are the same. You cannot know someone from a distance. You cannot know them through a screen. You must get close enough to feel where the grain runs true and where it has been compromised. Megan looked like family for 3 years. She cooked meals in my kitchen. She poured my coffee on Sunday mornings. She smiled and she said Nathan sends his love, and she told me my grandson was thriving at a school that did not exist. I measured her from 5 feet away and she passed every inspection. I did not get on my knees. I did not press my ear to the surface. I accepted the veneer because the veneer was beautiful. And questioning it meant admitting that I had let something rotten into my home. Do not accept the veneer. Get close. Ask the questions that make people uncomfortable. Watch what happens to their face when you say, "I would like to visit." Watch what happens to their voice when you say, "Let me talk to him alone." The people who love you will open every door. The people who are hiding something will always have a reason why the door must stay closed. The third lesson is this: children speak in behavior before they speak in words. Eli drew 287 pictures in that room. 167 of them showed doors. He was not drawing art. He was filing reports. He was submitting evidence in the only language available to him. Every scratched line on every cereal box was a testimony. Every sun he drew with its 9 fading rays was a plea. Children do not always tell you they are suffering. Sometimes they stop eating. Sometimes they stop laughing. Sometimes they draw the same image over and over until someone finally looks at it long enough to understand. Pay attention to the children in your life, not just to what they say, to what they draw, to what they repeat, to what they stop doing. Silence in a child is not peace. It is often a room with no handle on the inside. The fourth and final lesson is this: do not wait. I waited 43 nights. I waited because I was afraid of what I would find. I waited because confronting the truth meant my life as I knew it was over. I waited because the alternative, that my grandson had been beneath my feet for 3 years while I made coffee and sanded wood and slept 8 hours a night, was too monstrous to accept without proof. So I gathered proof, and I am glad I did, because that proof put Megan in a cell for 22 years. But I also know this: every night I waited was a night Eli spent alone in the dark, believing that thunder was hunting him. If you know something is wrong, act. Gather your evidence. Yes. Measure twice. Yes. But do not let the measuring become an excuse for standing still. There is a difference between patience and cowardice. Patience builds a case. Cowardice builds nothing. It only adds nights to the count. Tomorrow morning I will make coffee at 5:14. The cabinet will creak. The water will run. Bo will stretch and walk to his bowl and drink. And then I will drive to Pooler, and I will sit at a white oak table that my grandson and I built with our own hands, and I will watch him eat breakfast by a window full of light. That is my morning now. That is what waits on the other side of truth. If this story reached you today, there is a reason. Maybe you are the grandfather who has been pulling the dog away from the floor. Maybe you are the neighbor who hears something at night and tells yourself it is nothing. Maybe you are the child drawing doors. Whoever you are, I am asking you to do one thing. Listen. Listen to the scratch. Listen to the sound that does not belong. Listen to the discomfort that will not let you sleep. And then get on your knees and press your ear to the wood. And do not stand up until you know the truth. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, a story is the knock that opens a door. Subscribe so that the next story finds you before you need to search for it. And leave a comment below if there is someone in your life who was your Bo. Someone who kept telling you the truth until you were finally ready to hear it. God bless the dogs who do not stop scratching. God bless the children who draw doors until one of them opens. And God bless the hands that finally find the courage to measure what they have been afraid to touch. God bless you.